All right, hello and welcome to another episode of Charles' Weekly Party. I'm Charles, and I'm sure you can hear the echo, so I do apologize in advance for that. But before we get any further, let's roll the intro. All right, so first things first. It's unfortunate that I have an echo right now. I'm working on trying to get a permanent location to be able to record my podcast each week. And in the process of doing so, I do have to occasionally pick locations, and sometimes, like today, I have to sacrifice an echo-free room for peace and quiet. So I had a choice of I could have a room with much better acoustics but more disruptions, or I could have a room with some echo and a lot less disruptions. So either way, it creates extra strain, but I apologize in advance that you guys have to put up with the echo. It's not ideal for me either, because whenever I'm recording it, I can hear it and it annoys me. So I'm trying to mitigate it as best I can, but we'll have to see how it goes. But being that I'm recording this on Labor Day, and it will be released on Labor Day, but you won't be listening to it until the Tuesday after, I decided to choose something within America. And when I was doing my research, something popped out to me, and that something is the Two Rivers Public Charter School. So this charter school is located in Washington, D.C., and it is designed by Studio 27. Now, off the top of my head, I can't figure out whether or not I've actually talked about, what's the word for it? Whether I've actually talked about schools in the past. I think I have. I am not 100% sure on that. But my brain's a little bit off because I just had to go on a hunt for recording space. So what this school is, and what I'm talking about, I'm not talking about the entire facility. I'm talking about a relatively recent addition onto it that functions as a middle school. And what's really nice about this is it is a middle school with a direct connection to an elementary school. So it's on the same site, and it has a bridge connecting it with the elementary school and rest of the campus in a more secure fashion than just being outside. So what really sort of drives me to enjoy this particular piece of architecture is that it's an example of how to creatively work with limitations. There are a lot of different things going on within it, but it really demonstrates well on how to make sure that you're able to take into account a lot of limitations that you have to work with, and how to also go and be as creative as possible, because in this day and age, we are really taking a different look at how school is run. So, in the olden days, you had, notoriously uncomfortable chairs, desks, chairs standard attached to the desk, so you're a fixed distance away. And ironically enough, I'm actually recording sitting in that type of chair right now. But what's really entertaining is that used to be the way education or school was viewed. Static, everyone faces the front of a room, everyone goes and It's not designed to be comfortable, etc., etc. Nowadays, we are finding out that needs to be, or in modern school design, that's not the way things are done as much anymore. So to make things more accessible, chairs in any modern classroom, the chair is kept separate from the desk because you don't know I'm trying to figure out the best way to put it. There are various circumstances where a fixed distance between a chair and a desk won't work. And also in any really modern school, you'll usually encounter at least one ADA accessible desk, which is basically wide enough if the rest of the desks in the room can't, there's one desk that's wide enough to be able to accommodate a wheelchair, which is nice. And this school is once again an example of that. It's not just the mundane, it's not a mundane educational area. It really puts the focus on making sure that the educational space is as usable as possible and as friendly as possible. Because I've discovered, and as I'm sure many, many other students have, that if you are sitting in, I guess the best way to put it is, comfort is the lack of discomfort, which is a phrase that I was introduced to last week. And thinking about that really opens up a lot of possibilities. Because if you think about it, you never really notice when you're comfortable. You can reflect on it afterwards. Oh, I was pretty comfortable. But comfort is really a lack of discomfort. It's an irony because to be comfortable is to be not uncomfortable. But when you look at life through that lens, and the education space in particular, if you're uncomfortable, there's a good chance you're going to be thinking about your lack of comfort instead of what the learning lesson is. So if you're in I don't want to make it sound torturous, but if you're in, and I've been in both types of classrooms. I've been in ones where you have your fixed chair and desk and nothing's really comfortable and something's poking you somewhere, and if you readjust, everything moves around. And then I've been in modern collaborative classrooms where all the chairs are comfortable and they're height adjustable too, which is a big bonus. And the other thing is, usually with those classrooms, they're not to mention, they always have a little bit more audio-visual piece, but if you think about it, everything that the modern classroom is designed to be able to more comfortably learn it. You're less likely to be uncomfortable in a classroom that was designed in the last 5 years than you are in a classroom that was designed previously or designed maybe 20 years ago, because 20 years ago we weren't I don't think the modern classroom standards reflected appropriately, or everyone was following standards of, here's what a classroom looks like, here's how we're going to make it look, and now we're in a stage of, we need to make it so that students can actually focus on learning. But time for me to get off of my soapbox, because I'm talking about the furniture in the classroom, and I'm not talking about the walls that form the classroom, which are just as important. And obviously in most classrooms, you have a lot of different things in place, but the modern approach to it is significantly better, and I'd say we have to keep improving. If you're planning, let's say you have a building that's going to be around for the next 20 years, if you can do a furniture upgrade, do it. Your students will thank you. So future students may not be able to appreciate it as much, but current ones will. But going back to this particular school, you don't have to worry about only sitting in a classroom because you can sit on the stairs. There are what are called, I'm trying to figure out, I can't remember the exact terminology that they used, but it's basically stairs that are designed to be able to be sat upon to I guess, learn in a more open classroom. So your classroom isn't confined to four walls. You can have something out there right in the heart of the building, and this area with the sitting steps is a perfect example of that. So, going back to some of the limitations that they worked on, there are both financial and physical limitations. Financial limitations because it's a school. Schools generally operate on limited budgets, and doing a building upgrade like this is never a cheap thing. If you do it right, it costs you money. So in order to reduce the financial impact of this, there were a couple of pieces that were used in order to make sure that the costs stayed lower for the new facility. So since this middle school portion is connected to an elementary school portion, it's absolutely, I want to figure out the best word. It is ideal and economical to utilize the existing spaces, such as your cafeteria and your nurse's office, which are the spaces that were particularly reused or expanded, because there's no sense in building a whole new cafeteria and kitchen, which costs a lot of money, because the walk-in refrigerator will account for a large portion of that, I guarantee you. You think getting a refrigerator for your kitchen at home is bad? Wait until you see the prices on a walk-in. They aren't great, because you need a lot of work for that. Without getting into too much detail though, nurse's office, if you have a proper setup, makes no sense to duplicate that, and plus having two separate nurses' offices means you have to have two separate nurses, and that's an extra salary that you have to pay. So as long as the existing nurse can handle the extra customers, then you're good. And I know the students, one could say, are not customers, but in this particular sense, that's a phrase I'm going to use. The other big thing was physical limitations, and space conservation was a big thing. So the existing space is designed with the maximum amount of conservation as possible. So first and foremost, to help you envision it, it's almost like a red box with a rounded corner on one side, and then on a side adjacent to that, there's a cutout on the first floor where the drop-off is, and that is great for more than one reason. And part of the reason I say that is because it's not covering a drop-off and pickup area isn't usually high on the list of priorities when you're building a new school. But because of the challenge that was posed by having limited space on the site, and also having to worry about a 15-foot setback and having some area for kids to be able to play outside, balancing all of that out meant the easiest thing to do was have a second level over the drop-off area, which means you're able to have more floor space, and you're able to, on the second floor, and you're able to have a covered pickup and drop-off area, which I can tell you right now, I never had something that comprehensive through all of my primary and secondary schooling. So if it was raining and I didn't have an umbrella, it was mad dash from the school to the car. There's no getting around that. But these kids don't have to worry about that, and for that, they have got to be appreciative, because it's not something you realize on a dry day, or, well, you might because it'll be shaded, but when it's raining buckets, you'll notice it. And the other big thing is needing to have this space also frees up buildable area, because now you're able to work on you're able to have a second floor above that, which means that all that floor space is, which you can't use on the first floor for classroom type use, you can use on the second floor. And now that I'm mentioning floors, it should also be usable on a possible third floor. As part of the financial limitations, they didn't have the money right then to build a 3-level addition, but they wanted that ability in the future. So the existing facility is built in such a way that the structural system can support a 3rd level. So having the ability to possibly have that 3rd floor is something that can be quite useful, and most of which is due to the fact that you can only really build the structural system once. If you need to rebuild the structural system, then you need to rebuild the building. And I'm sure there is some case study in history where a structural system was, well, I can think one right off the top of my head. The Met Opera had reinforcements added when they got a new set piece for for Richard Wagner's Ring Cycle. They got a really heavy set piece for that, and that was heavy enough that they needed to add structural reinforcement to the stage, which in that scenario is a little bit easier to do than a closed wall classroom. Because I'm not going to go into it, but in order to make something able to hold an additional level is a lot of structural work if you don't plan for it. But when you plan for it like this, if they have the money to build the 3rd level, they can do it with obviously some inconvenience, but they have a green roof to worry about, and they have that opening, or they have a little bit of a slanted skylight. Skylight's the wrong term. Slanted area in the middle, right above that central staircase with the sitting steps, that allows in a lot of light, so it's a naturally daylit space. So, other than that, the other pieces about it has a beautiful finish on the outside. It's a nice, a red, I don't know exactly what material was used, but a red sort of paneled look. And under the cantilever there is a decent little waiting area. It's beautifully lit, and you have exposed wood on the ceiling, which carries through inside. So I've given a lot of thoughts on how I feel the whole piece panned out and how it reflects a modern learning environment. I got on that soapbox earlier. But all in all, this is a place that actually looks really nice to study in. And I know it's not going to happen instantly. It's going to take a while, but as time goes on, educational spaces are going to shift. And there is a lot of work that needs to be done to make education better, and I'm not going to go into that whole issue right now, but architectural spaces is one of them. That making the architecture better and more welcoming, and more, there are other words that can be used, but you get the picture. Make it a better environment for you to learn in, has a whole ton of upsides, and the only downside is the time and energy and money to actually build it. But the other thing you end up needing for a good learning space in this day and age is good technology. Now, while I'm not going to be talking about educational technology today, I do have three things, well, sort of three things that pan into what caught my eye technology-wise this week. So, first one is more of an excitement. So, I guess it's our appetizer for the tech section. South Korea has passed a bill that would mandate the allowance of third-party payment platforms on app stores. So for Google and Apple, in the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store respectively, apps would have the authority to link to a third-party payment processor in order to actually process the data, or process the credit card or the payment, so that you can skip Apple and Google's pretty big cut. So, as one might expect, Apple and Google are not thrilled with this. And I've mentioned time and time again about about all the problems surfacing now with the 30% cut. And Google has said something, and Apple has also come out with something. Apple has come up with a whole bunch of other somethings, which is a later section for me to talk about. But for now, I'm going to focus on the Google and Android piece. And Google's response was that the 30% cut is really what allows Android to remain a free operating system for use. And you may not think a lot about that, but if you've seen the cost difference between, cost difference between Android and Apple phones. Android phones are usually significantly less expensive than their iOS counterparts. And I'm not going to go into the whole Android versus iOS, because there are pros and cons to each of them. So it's one of those things where I've had I have an Android device that's not able to work with the latest and greatest updates, and really only worked with a couple of Android generations. But the other thing that is sort of encapsulated in that is with Apple's iOS, it's a more closed down platform, but older devices get a lot more support. I mean, the current iOS release supports all the way back to iPhone 6. You may not think that's a lot, and you may be saying, who uses an iPhone 6? But that is a long life cycle to be able to have. If you still have an iPhone 6 that's working, it's still supported software-wise. But what this means is that in South Korea, at least, if you want to link to a third-party payment platform, once this bill is fully put into law, you'll be able to. And speaking of wonderful Android apps, remember how Microsoft announced that Android apps would be included in or able to be supported on Windows 11? Well, that got delayed from launch. Windows 11, when it gets officially released on October 5th for for supported devices as an upgrade, that will be the point in time. At that point in time, you will not be able to get the Android apps for Windows quite yet. Microsoft has said that they will be releasing that in the future, but it's not something ready for launch, which it brings a lot of disappointment, but it also brings into account a catch-22 that manufacturers have to work with all the time, or in this case, software developers, because Apple and Microsoft both have to worry about this often. You end up having a choice. Do you release the operating system on time with missing features, or do you delay the rollout of that operating system until you can get all of the features? And it comes down to a balancing act. So yes, it may be disappointing that this new feature isn't there yet, but you don't have it right now either. So it ends up coming down to a simple, which would you prefer? Do you want Windows 11 with not that feature, or if you don't want to go to Windows 11 without that feature, and there are plenty of good reasons not to go to Windows 11 on launch day, let the users en masse find the bugs that exist instead of you finding them on your device. So Windows 10 will still be supported for at least another 4 years. So can't complain too much. There were plenty of jokes about how nice it would be if Windows 11 were released on November 11th or 11/11, but that is Veterans Day, so not necessarily something you want to take away attention from. Although why they couldn't do October 11th is beyond me. And if I look at the calendar really quickly, October 11th is a Monday. Although I could think of a really good reason not to have it on that, which is that if you find a bug on Monday, it's not going to make everyone's week a lot better. So instead, they're releasing it on a Tuesday. Enough about that. And that was the... I enjoy some vegetables, but that was the vegetables of the tech section. And I'm going to finish this up with some updates from Apple. And there were a bunch of them this past week. First and foremost, the CSAM feature set has been delayed. So there's been a lot of backlash on it, and Apple has now announced that they're delaying this for further review and further feedback, which I think roughly translates to there is a lot of negative feedback right now on it, and a lot of people aren't happy. So until we can figure out a better way to do this, then it's going to run into problems. But a lot of people, I think, forgot about the fact that, yeah, Apple's a lot more privacy conscious, but they're also trying to figure out how to make sure what is 100% illegal content stays off of their servers. Because more often than not, ignorance of the law does not tolerate violation of the law. If it's encrypted well enough that Apple can't see it, nobody else can see it, then nobody should know. But at the same time, there's another argument, which is by announcing this feature set, I broke down previous episode of what each of the feature sets were, because it's not Apple is going to scan every single photo you have, and you can't get out of that. But it comes down to, there's that whole breakdown, but it comes down to the CCM feature is causing too much trouble right now, so they're going to hold off on it, which is a very good business decision to make. And if I could speak from the mindset of maybe you have something that you wouldn't want to be noticed by Apple. If you were in violation of this, okay, I have to cut that back out, because that's just misleading. If you think about it from the perspective of someone who may have illegal content on their device, getting warning of this, if they want to keep what they're doing under the radar, they're going to make sure that iCloud Photos isn't in use, so that they don't run into the CCM scanning feature. All right, next thing. In iOS and iPadOS 15, Apple will be asking permission, like it forces everyone else to right now, for personalized ads. So as of, I think, iOS and iPadOS 14.5, everyone was required to, all of the developers were required to put up a notice about personalized ads and leave it up to the user, which, unsurprisingly, only a quarter of users selected that they wanted personalized ads. So how that works in the future, we'll have to see. Next, Apple has made, in the face of a antitrust lawsuit in Japan, a concession to what are called reader applications on the App Store. So reader apps as in things that let you consume media, so Netflix would fall into this category. And what this means is if you have something where you're where you're going for media inside of the app, so maybe you're getting I don't know what the word for it is. If you're getting music streaming, or I can't say music streaming is going to be in there, but possible example, Netflix is there, so maybe you're reading books or reading ebooks, watching movies. I can't count my fingers. If you're watching the video piece, you just saw that whole interesting part. Long and short of it is, if for something like Netflix, you can't, they'll be able to have a external link for the sign up. And right now, the way they get around Apple taking a 30% cut from them is to make it so that you can only sign in to the Netflix app if you are an existing Netflix subscriber, which is effectively a loophole to get around the beast, because you can sign up in your web browser on the device without a problem. So it's just a different way to take advantage of getting around it, and it makes, in my mind, just makes the customer's life easier. Last but not least, and this can be dessert for some people, and this might be extraordinary unpleasant vegetables for others. When Apple announced that the latest version of iOS would support the storing of a virtual ID in your phone, well, now it's coming to light as to what states will allow virtual ID. So if you live in Arizona, Connecticut, Georgia, Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, Oklahoma, or Utah, you will be able to load your ID, so your driver's license or non-driver's license, onto your phone. And the TSA has officially announced that they'll be accepting this as a verification of identification. So whether or not you like the virtual ID, it's there, and if you live in those states, well, you'll be able to take the plastic piece of your ID and put it onto your phone. Although, do keep in mind, plastic doesn't have a battery that can die in it or get otherwise messed up. Your driver's license is waterproof. Your phone is water resistant, but not waterproof. So, while this is a nice thing, it does have some drawbacks, and while it can make your life easier, my personal recommendation is even if you're going to be using this, just have your if you're going to be traveling, have your driver's license on your person, because if something happens, and there are a plethora of things that can happen to your wallet or to your ID, someone snags your phone, or you drop your phone in a lake, spill coffee on it, forget the charger, or forget to charge it, and you're in the middle of nowhere and the thing's dead, and you need to, let's say you get pulled over and you can't demonstrate an ID, well, that's going to be tough luck. So when this actually rolls out, we'll have to see how well it works out, but my personal recommendation is there's a reason why ID is it may be an extra thing to carry, yes, but it is a useful thing to have. So if you did enjoy this episode, which I really hope you did, please feel free to leave a review, especially if you listen to it on Apple Podcasts, or if you want, you can always go and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. Also, if you go to anchor.fm/CharlesWeeklyPartT, or click on the podcast website link that may be available in your platform, you can find all previous episodes of the podcast, as well as the ability to leave a voice message, or if you choose to support the podcast, because it is not free for me to produce. You can also see the action on YouTube. I know there are a couple of weeks that for other constraints I haven't been able to get a video component to, but this week, most weeks, there will be a video portion to it. So once again, hope you enjoyed the episode, and take care. Hope you had a happy Labor Day if you're in America, and if not, I hope you have a good week no matter where you are, and take care, and I'll see you at the next episode. Roll the outro.